What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now today's video is going to be another reading my old writing video, and that is because you guys absolutely loved the last one and I absolutely loved filming it because, trust me, it was a ride for me too. So I figured I would go ahead and film another one for you guys today. Also, I had nothing else to film, so we end up here. I'm just gonna say it, I have a couple disclaimers to get out there. I know y'all see the shadow behind me, and that is because I have a lamp staring me in the face. It's blinding, like super blinding. I'm not even using it as a regular lamp. I actually have the lamp sitting on its side so that the light bulb is like staring me right in the face, and trust me, it hurts me. It deeply hurts me. Like, I can't barely even see anything. Coincidentally, that is also why I don't have my glasses on in today's video, because there was such a glare on my glasses. Let me just show you. I didn't figure you wanted to see this for the entire video, so I decided to just go ahead and take them off and save you guys the despair. Oh, I also have a nectarine with me, so I may or may not be eating this in today's video. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, before I went on my little rants, today's video is going to be a reading my old writing video. Now, in my last reading my old writing video, I read a book that I had written when I was about 9 years old. Now, if you haven't already watched that video, I would highly recommend you go check it out. It's super hilarious. I will have it linked in the cards and also in the description box for you to go check out. But in today's video, I am going to read a book that I wrote about 6 years ago, I believe. Now, funny story about this book, I password locked it because I didn't want anyone to read it because I was super serious about writing and publishing this one. Now, the thing is, I wasn't super connected to this one. I only got about 4,000 words in, and the reason for that is because it's basically an exact replica, just with different character names, of Shadow Queen by CJ Redwine. Now, again, if you've seen my last video, you'll hear me say basically the same thing, where I read a book and I copied it, and it's just like I took such heavy inspiration from that book that I basically wrote the exact same thing, just like 10 times worse. So this one is relatively similar in that regard. So if you've read CJ Redwine's Shadow Queen, this is gonna sound very, very similar to that, and I totally can't remember how similar, but I know I was writing it and I was like, this isn't even my book. Like, I'm not even writing my book. This is somebody else's book. So that's why I ended up cutting it off and I stopped writing it. I'm super, super excited about this one. I forgot the password until just about a week ago. I was trying to get in and I couldn't remember the password, and it had been like 5 years since I have opened this document. Ends up it was one of the passwords that I had already typed in, but I just hadn't capitalized the first letter. Semantic. So I ended up getting in, but it has been several years since I've looked at this, and I'm super excited. Let's just get into it. I feel like I've talked for way too long. Let's just start. So the header says, 3 years ago, after devastation hit the kingdom of Ether, spelled E-T-H-R, which I thought was very clever at the time, but I don't know. I'll give myself points for that one. After devastation hit the kingdom of Ether, nothing was ever the same. The gap that the king and queen had once filled was empty, and the crown princess had no hope for the future of her kingdom. The once beautiful colors of the land had faded, and the charm that it had held was gone. It had to have been when I was around 13 or 14 when I wrote this. Let me just say, the writing is not terrible. Like, I actually kind of like it. The queen had once graced that land, changing into the hawk form she was gifted with when she was born to royalty, flying over the land to replenish the crops and fill the mountains with the color of her magic. This is where it gets more Shadow Queen-like. I mean, this is where it gets like we're into the book. It's the first page and it's already sounding like Shadow Queen. I thought the characters shape-shifting into like hawks and wolves was super cool. So I basically copied that in this book, and that's where I went wrong. But without the willpower, the princess couldn't do as her mother once did. Willpower? Get up the umph, girl, and start doing it. Start replenishing those crops. Everyone greeted her with bitter sadness, as though she hadn't had enough pity in the past few days. Oh, her mom died. See, I didn't make that very clear. Her sweet and loving maid was the only person in the world who could make her forget all the daunting tasks laying out in front of her. I was trying. And anymore, she couldn't do that either. All smiles and traces of happiness had vanished from the palace, as well as the immediate surrounding villages and markets. Almost as soon as the king and queen had died of the rare blood disease overnight, a young woman in a neighboring kingdom, the kingdom of Ulthrain, had come to Ether to seek the princess's help. Nerissa, a bright and innocent girl who had just lost her fiancé, came to Ether with one proposition: that she helps the princess with her responsibilities. Now, genuinely, I do not know where the story is going because it's been so long, but already it sounds like this girl Nerissa, it already sounds like she poisoned the king and queen. I said that so vulgarly. What the heck is wrong with me? I'm like, poison. Oh my gosh. Okay. Clearly she wants something on the princess, but maybe that's not how the story goes. I don't know. I'm riding along with you guys. The princess, under less strenuous situations, would have known better immediately, but grief and bitter fear clouded her judgment. She quickly agreed to the offer of help, and Nerissa began. At first, everything seemed fine, but as time grew on, only 7 days after the sudden death had occurred, Nerissa gained more and more power. She convinced the princess to put off the coronation and sweet-talked her with words like knives coated in honey. That is such a cliche sentence, but honestly, I'm kind of here for it. Like, this whole thing is written kind of well for being 13 or 14. Let's just say I was 14 because that sounds right in my head. It sounds like I put a lot of effort into this beginning part, and I feel like it's just gonna go downhill from here. As far as prose goes, I feel like it's gonna go downhill from here for sure. The princess was blind to everything around her, and soon she signed a paper allowing the coronation of Nerissa, soon to be the Queen of Ether. Now that's super dumb because she could just become the queen herself. If she's gonna give Nerissa the coronation to become queen, she should have just become queen herself and then made Nerissa like underneath her, at least. That's definitely a messed up move right there. Un momento. Let's continue, shall we? It was then that everything turned black. The crops died, the mountains lost their color. Did they really have that much color to begin with? I don't know. And the sunset and sunrise were no longer visible from the palace gardens below the princess's balcony. Actually, it says from the princess balcony. Once Nerissa was in power, no one could stop her. She ruled with fear and contempt, forcing the people of Ether to bow down at her feet, kissing the ground she walked upon and worshipping her very name. The princess soon grew... What? No, sorry. The princess soon knew she had made a horrible decision, and the results were showing drastically. Sorry. No, it's really hard to read right now. I don't know, like... Drastically? Really? Her people, the people who had once shown her respect and honor, were turning on her, despising her for everything she was worth. Her name struck anger into the hearts of the merchants, and her face brought animosity to the quaint villagers. I kind of like the way this is written, like, dang. It's a little bit like dictionary-y, but like, not bad. She fell asleep often, wishing her parents were there to comfort her, and sometimes wishing death upon herself. Alright, we got a suicidal princess, ladies and gentlemen. It was the 8th night after her parents' misfortune that Nerissa ordered the princess to be killed. I just want to point out the timing here. That's kind of interesting because it says that 7 days after Nerissa came into the kingdom, she started gaining more and more power and weird things were occurring. The princess signed Nerissa on to be the Queen of Ether, and then only the next day, which would be 8 days after she got there, like, these things are happening. You would think Nerissa would give the princess more time, but maybe not. The princess's faithful servant, however, heard this murderous request. She slowly walked to the princess's chamber with a tray in hand, trying as hard as she could to act as though nothing were going on, and banged on the princess's door, being careful not to spill the drinks sitting atop the tray. Atop the tray. "Milady, your nightly tea is prepared." I have to read it like that. She shuffled her feet anxiously, hoping the princess would not turn her away without a thought towards her fear-filled voice. She spotted a guard passing by, making his rounds throughout the castle, and breathed in deeply, only exhaling when she thought it was safe. After a long pause, You may enter." She opened the door cautiously and peeked around the corner, careful not to trip over the corner of the rug, as she had done before at an alarmingly high rate. She set the tray down onto the bedside table, and the princess smoothed out the covers. She could tell the princess was curious as to this invasion of unusual privacy. It says invasion of unusual privacy. Oh, usual. I'm just reading it wrong. I'm reading everything wrong today, man. She could tell the princess was curious to this invasion of usual privacy by the way her eyes followed her. Still a weird sentence. The princess's breath came in short gasps, her hair flowing softly around her shoulders after wearing the day in a bun. She put her hand on her friend's arm, I'm sure, and looked deep into her eyes. "What's wrong? You look as if you have seen a ghost." Never heard that one before. Oh, I'm eating the napkin. You know, I probably shouldn't film and eat this at the same time. The princess didn't use her courtly voice, but instead a tone she wouldn't dare use in front of royalty, let alone Nerissa. "May I speak openly, your highness?" Her servant wrung her hands, shifting her eyes around the room cautiously. She could lose her job, or worse, if she was caught spilling this news to the princess. But right now, all she cared about was the princess. "Of course, Alex. What's gotten into you?" the princess said, her hair shimmering with strands of moonlight intertwined within it as she brushed through it with her hand. "Moonlit hair, huh?" "Mm-hmm." Alex leaned closer, speaking quickly. "She has ordered your death, your highness. You must run." The princess looked hurt. "What do you mean, ordered my death?" She leaned back, looking at Alex with full intensity. "You must run. Nerissa ordered the guards to find you and kill you. We need to go now." Alex grabbed the princess's hand, pulling her out of the bed. "I don't understand. You would never lie to me. Why now?" Alex was hurt, but she couldn't— yeah, that's rude. Alex was hurt, but she couldn't let her emotions weigh her down. Pulling the princess to the door, she looked around the side, gasping slightly as 3 guards with swords rounded the far corner. "What is going on?" the princess wailed, keeping her voice quiet in the midst of the chaos. Alex pulled her closely, staring directly into her eyes to make full contact. "Nerissa has ordered you to be killed. The guards are coming for you, and if we don't run, you will die." By the stern look Alex gave her, the princess made no further comments and grabbed her cloak, letting Alex guide her through the doors out onto the balcony. Slipping a knife out of her pocket, Alex cut the bangers. Oh my gosh. This is a PG rated channel, I swear. Alex cut Slipping a knife out of her pocket, Alex cut the banners hanging from the side of the palace, and within seconds she had turned them into a version of ropes to climb down with. Ending that sentence with a preposition. I don't know about it. The princess kept her mouth closed as she and her trusted servant shuffled down the torn banners. Once they reached the ground, Alex grabbed the princess's hand once again, pulling her into the unusually calm South Market. Oh my gosh. Okay, if you guys haven't seen the last video, there were a lot of similarities between the book that I wrote when I was 9 years old and the book that I have published now, Red Aberrant. There's the same thing is happening with this book, okay? So there's a South Market, and in Red Aberrant, I originally had several different markets. So there was like a South Market and a North Market. Eventually, I just made it the Central Marketplace. But it's so funny that, like, I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny, but we're gonna move on. Merchants closing their shops in the last hours of the day busied around the streets. Buyers made their final purchases and milled around. The princess pulled her cloak further downward, shielding her face from recognition. The last thing she needed right now was to be spotted and made a fuss over. Once they were out of the South Market, they headed towards the 3rd arsenal. Oh my gosh. Red Aberrant has arsenals in it too. And there's like multiple of them. My shoulders just popped. 4 arsenals marked the corners of the palace grounds, looming tall above the makeshift roofs of the merchant. Oh my gosh, I have arsenals in Red Aberrant too, and they're like supposed to be super tall. The ruler of Ether would handpick the arsenal keepers themselves themselves, leaving no room for error. The princess didn't need to ask why they were headed directly toward an arsenal. I wrote this one all by myself. Alex's boyfriend, Michael, was an arsenal keeper. He and Alex had been together for longer than the princess had remembered, or cared to remember. Nice friend. Rounding the corner of the arsenal and coming up to the front, the two girls slipped into the arsenal using the key Alex had kept in her cloak pocket. Michael was inside and rounded the stone arsenal, cleaning and polishing the weapons for the next day. Surprised to see the princess, he bowed deeply. "Oh, give it up, Michael," the princess said, exasperated. Michael laughed. "Whatever Her Highness wishes," he said, half mocking her modesty. "What brings you girls here so late at night?" Alex suddenly felt cold. That's kind of funny because I thought this was told from the princess's perspective, but now it's saying that Alex felt cold. Draping her cloak around her shoulders for more protection, she told Michael why they had come. Michael sat down at his stool, suddenly feeling the walls of the arsenal closing in on him. Okay, so I'm just now realizing that when Alex was walking into the princess's chambers, it told it from her perspective. Apparently, I just missed the signs. This seems to be an omni-focused, what's a word? What is the word for that?
Okay, I found this on the web for what are the different parts of a book.
It's multiple POV. I don't know. He closed his eyes, pushing away the fear he felt for Alex. "I'll help you," he proclaimed, standing once again, only to turn around and grab a bow and several arrows from the shelf and handed it to Alex. Alex looked ready to protest, but Michael quickly spoke. "I don't need it. The Queen," he cleared his throat before continuing. "Nerissa won't notice it's gone. Take it, please." It also has a semicolon after "I don't." As Alex opened the door to the arsenal, the princess took one look back at the palace and ran. So chapter 1 says 3 years later. Renee sat under a fallen tree, huddled within the leaves, shuddering. She pushed the leaves out of the hiding, cleaning the ground of any debris or twigs. She glanced out of the hut, hoping Alex would return any moment. She was hungry. The coldness outside was nothing compared to the bitter cold growing like a snowball rolling down a hill in her stomach. This marked 3 years of a life of running, and she would never forget that this was all her fault. She knew that without Alex, she would be dead. Pulling her legs closer, she rested her head on her knees, thinking of the night Alex had come to warn her of Queen Nerissa's request. Pushing the thought out of her head, she tried to think of something else. Anything. But the thought stayed with her for hours. She closed her eyes, trying to remember her mother's soothing voice, soft and silky, unwavering in faith and strength. There was nothing she could do. The sound of branches breaking broke through her thoughts. The sound of branches breaking broke. A group of roughly 12 armed guards patrolled the area just near Renee. Each guard in the protection squad had several knives stashed away for emergency cases, as well as a double-edged sword sheathed just beneath their leg. First of all, tongue twister. Second of all, typically swords are double-edged, just to point that one out. They were not to be messed with. The protection squad was known for killing without mercy and torturing the innocent. No one would dare defy them, and the same went for Renee. Shifting her weight forward, Renee grabbed the knife she held tighter and took a deep breath. She grabbed the knife she held tighter and no. Exhaling slowly, she cataloging tools for possible escape. That doesn't make any sense. The trees would make easy protection, and with the help of the rope, she could climb easily to the top without being discovered. The warm handle of her knife reminded her of the last resort. She had always told herself that if faced with danger, killing wasn't an option. But that was when she was safe in a palace. Now everything was different. Renee held her breath, feeling the dirt fall into the open crevices of her shirt. Ew. If the protection squad walked around to the other side of the log, they would easily see her. She had to hope that wouldn't happen. She peered into the space between the foot-drop cliff behind her and the log above her. I love how it says the foot-drop cliff. Like you're like, oh my gosh, there's a cliff next to me and it's a whole foot drop. I'm gonna die. Nothing. She was safe. Stepping out from under the log, Renee stretched out the sore tendons in her legs and arms. Hearing more rustling, Renee whirled around just in time to spot Alex coming towards her, bow and arrow in hand. She had a backpack slung over her shoulder as well. She set the bow down on the ground, and the quiver of arrows followed. Putting the backpack on the ground, she opened it up, pulling out 3 small rabbits. "Hungry?" she asked, smiling meekly. "Look, I know it's not much, but it's all I could find. I found tracks from the protection squad. Looked like they headed this way from the palace." Scared all the darn animals within a 100-yard radius, Alex looked stressed. She had been under a lot of pressure, leaving Michael and all. Yeah, just leaving the boyfriend that she had. Big deal. The squad had been traveling further and further every time they went out on their patrol, and it was beginning to worry Renee. Michael left me another note by our tree, Alex said. I think it's kind of funny that Michael's leaving Alex notes, which kind of makes me think that because Michael couldn't travel that far since he's an arsenal keeper, he has to like stay in the same area or else he's not like gonna be able to do his job. That means that they, Alex and Renee, didn't go very far in the first place. Alex began skinning the rabbits, tilting her head side to get a bit better angle. Renee picked up the second rabbit and began to skin it. She couldn't quit thinking about her mom and dad. What would it have been like if they had lived? Would she still be training to become queen? Pushing the thoughts out of her mind for the umpteenth time, she tossed the rabbit down with the others and stood up. She walked about a quarter of a mile to the creek and bent down to collect some water in the 2 jugs she had slung over her back. Renee threw a look around her every few seconds, wary of any guards about. Once the jugs were filled, she stood up, tied the long woven straps around the handle of the jug, and slung them around her shoulder. That's a lot. Renee threw one more glance over her shoulder before heading out. She began to wonder how long she would have to be cautious of doing things as simple as taking a stroll in the woods. What made it worse was that she wasn't being wary of wolves or bears. Oh my gosh. What made it worse was that she wasn't being wary of wolves or bears. She was fearing for her life because of Nerissa. Renee never knew she would wish for the danger of animals. But with the protection squad nearly breathing down her neck, she would give anything to trade them for the simple annoyance of belligerent animals. After about a half an hour, Renee and Alex were enjoying the little meal they had. Renee studied Alex's face for a moment and began to notice the worry lines that had etched their way across her face. The way her blue eyes were hardened with the pure purpose of survival, how her thin blonde hair sat on her shoulders and her fair skin nearly matched its color. Renee pushed the bones off her plate and tried to think of something to say to break the silence. "Which direction are you planning to head now?" she asked. "We need to continue heading away from Ether or else Nerissa will be on our tails in no time." If they've been traveling for 3 years, you would think they'd be far away from Ether at this point. Alex shifted her spot on the ground. "I was thinking we should go west, towards Valkrain." Renee wasn't sold. No one liked the greedy, selfish werewolves in Valkrain. No one in Ether, at least. Renee's father had always told her of stories when Valkrain and Ether were allies, but Renee had never been able to witness this alliance. Ethrains and Valkrindors couldn't stand each other, but the constant bickering back and forth eventually sealed the silent war between the 2 kingdoms. The Valkrindors sounds like a Harry Potter, like Gryffindor. Ethrins believed the Valkrindors to be snobby and selfish, and the Valkrindors thought nothing more of the Ethrins. I know it's not ideal, but it's the only option we have right now. We couldn't possibly cross over to the east side of Ether in a mere couple day. Alex reasoned, and with the protection squad on our every move, moving west is the best idea. Alex's argument left no room for debate. It was settled. "If only I could change and make out the best path we should take," Renee pouted. She hated the confinement of being human. Her hawk side tore at her relentlessly until the cool of the night came, and Renee could change to perch on a nearby tree, low enough to avoid danger from Queen Nerissa. "You know you can't do that. It's too risky. Nerissa would send out all of her protection squad groups in the blink of an eye if she saw anything that caught her attention. Changing to fly above the trees would be the fastest option rather than the smartest. Flying was no choice, and if Renee's hawk side got the better of her, Queen Nerissa would spot her quicker than they could ask for help from the stars. Renee and Alex packed up their meager belongings. The trek was a long one, and with every step a growing uneasiness filled Renee's chest, her heart thumping loudly beneath her skin and the constant struggle to stay human. Soon her breathing became heaved and ragged with each passing hour until they stopped for the night, and the labored breathing slowed and became deeper until she fell fast asleep. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to chapter 2. I'm pretty sure this is also the last chapter in the book, so let's keep on reading. The moonlight shone through the window, sending a pool of light flowing down onto the tiles of the floor. It was midnight, and the eerie shadows cast from the nearly burnt out candles made Cliff, Crown Prince of Valkrain, shiver. His father, the king, had left on an important mission to see for himself the harm being done by the orcs and ogres trespassing into their land. Alright, so we got some Lord of the Rings coming in here too. The war had been going on for 3 months and Cliff was sick of it. His father was always gone and his older brother took over the palace with pride. His father had always seen his brother as the perfect son. It made Cliff sick. Sitting in his best friend Xavier's house was the only comfort offered to him. Cliff ran his hand through his short brown hair and sighed. I'm 24 for Star's sake. I should be able to make my own decisions, regardless of the power my brother has over me, Cliff complained to Xavier and his girlfriend Tira. I'm just so sick of it. Thaddeus is always seen as the perfect brother, not to mention an even better ruler, which makes me look powerless compared to him. He sighed again, getting up from his spot on the ground where he was leaning against the wall and went to sit in the chair next to Xavier. I didn't bring you here to complain, Xavier put his arm around Tira, who maneuvered out of his grasp. Then why did you? Tira asked. Her hazel eyes shone with annoyance. Oh, this couple. Gotta love them. Xavier got up, walking over to his run-down pantry, if you could even call it that, and grabbed a mug of ale. For this, he raised the mugs in the air. That's what I'm talking about, Cliff said, his voice rising with excitement as he got out of his seat and pumped his fist in the air. That was what he needed to get good and drunk. He grabbed a mug from Xavier and raised it in the air before draining its contents. The liquid burned in his throat. Xavier shouted and did the same. Tira rolled her eyes. I wouldn't have agreed to let you come over if I knew this was going to happen, she said, staring at Cliff. I should have known. Relax, Tira. We gotta have fun sometimes, Xavier remarked, filling another mug for Cliff and then for himself. Every night, Tira muttered under her breath. I'm with the girlfriend. Cliff downed 2 more mugs until he was good and drunk. His head began to spin and he almost wished he hadn't drunk in the first place. Almost. You're not good for me, Cliff spoke too loudly and Xavier laughed. Cliff drank 1 more mug, making it a total of 4 mugs. Thad don't know what's good for him, Cliff slurred. He hasn't even had a prop. He tried to say proper, but the ale was kicking in fast. Real drink, he said instead to avoid embarrassment. He could hear Tira sighing in the corner of the room. Getting completely wasted was normal for Cliff. He started because of Thad and his natural-born leadership skills, and Cliff was tired of hearing his father go on and on about how good his older brother was. With the raging war between the ogres and orcs of Orath, Cliff noticed the reoccurring disappearance of his father, filled by his only happy-to-help brother. After his father had returned from the last trip to the battlegrounds, he had said that Valkrane reigned victorious. But that was only hope. Something Cliff didn't have much of. His head began to pound with the thoughts turning and burning inside of him. Cliff ambled over to the nearest chair, his head swimming. It was all too much to handle. He didn't want to think anymore. Cliff began to see sparks at the edge of his vision. He stumbled around trying to find Xavier. It was a small house, but Cliff's impaired vision made it hard to clear the haze in his eyes and focus. As the sparks began to take over his sight, Cliff noticed the garbled laughing of Xavier and the absence of Tira. His sight was soon taken over and Cliff plunged headfirst into total peace. I like how Tira just like gave up and left. Oh, so then we have chapter 3 and it says after... That's all. The book's over. The end. So this one I'm kind of proud of. Genuinely, I don't think it's that bad. Aside from content-wise, where I kind of just copied Shadow Queen, it's not actually that bad, and I really, really enjoyed this one. 4,000 words of pure surprise. I will be doing another one of these because I have a couple more books that I wrote that I want to read to you guys and just react for myself. But aside from that, I hope you guys have a great day or a great night or whenever it is that you're watching this, and I will see you guys in my next video on Friday. Bye!